So back on April 26th, over a couple weeks ago now, we had the historical 12-round brawl between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium that had everyone talking. Now that fight here on UK soil was the inaugural Ring Magazine card. After Turki Al Sheikh acquired the Ring Magazine brand, of course the Ring Magazine cards are now basically the Riyadh season shows outside of Riyadh. And the very next week after Eubank Jr. vs Benn, we had the second ever Ring Magazine card on the Friday, the big triple header in Times Square, with Teofimo Lopez vs Arnold Barboza Jr., the WBO Super Lightweight World title fight. We had Devin Haney vs Jose Ramirez, and Ryan Garcia vs Rolly Romero. Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney both making their return to the ring after their fight with each other last year, and 1 year of inactivity from both of their parts since. And then we had the Canelo vs Scull card in Riyadh on the Saturday, which was a pretty stacked card. So it was shaping up to be a massive and enthralling 2-week period of boxing all round. But in the end, it really wasn't. The Times Square card on the Friday was a flop, and then Canelo vs Scull ended up being a historically bad fight. It was laughable. Of course we had the Inoue fight on the Sunday on the Top Rank show, which didn't disappoint at all, but in regards to the period spanning 8 days of the free Ring Magazine / Riyadh season cards on DAZN, thanks to the Eubank Jr. vs Benn fight alone, because the undercard of that fight wasn't really all that, the UK show impressed the most by far in regards to entertainment value. But we just had another big UK show on the weekend as well with Anto Cacace vs Lee Wood. But there was more that went on later that night in boxing over in the US as well. So did the UK shows get the better of the last few weeks of boxing then? Now, the Times Square card. Despite Teofimo Lopez having a good dominant performance and Rolly Romero pulling off the massive upset with his points victory over Ryan Garcia, knocking him down in the process, the Lopez vs Barboza fight wasn't particularly entertaining. Haney vs Ramirez was comically boring, the way Devin Haney was running around for the whole 12 rounds, and in the main event, Ryan Garcia literally did nothing after being knocked down in the second round, so we got 10 boring rounds in there. That card also terribly hurt the building of a potential rematch between Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney, of course. The matchmakers thought they were being cute by doing this double header above a big world title fight to set up the massive rematch. Both Garcia and Haney were heavy favourites in their respective fights, and were expected to make statement victories. But Haney looked absolutely shook in there, so afraid to engage, and Ryan Garcia just looked clueless and looked like he couldn't box. And most people aren't fussed about seeing the rematch next after that night of boxing. They ought to be coming off of better performances to hype up the rematch, surely. But I share the same sentiment as Rolly Romero when it comes to the Ryan Garcia vs Devin Haney 2 talks. Romero was saying before the fight, when asked about sort of being overlooked and used to set up the Garcia vs Haney rematch, that after he beats Ryan Garcia, then him and Haney can go and have their little rematch. And after actually beating Ryan Garcia, Rolly's still sticking to that now, of course, that the rematch between Garcia and Haney should still be next anyway. Because despite, again, both Haney and Garcia being huge favourites going into their fights in the Times Square card, with Haney's boring performance and Ryan's loss, that brings to light how much a risk it is to do this sort of set-up fight double-header thing. Well, PBC are actually doing it later this month with the Plant Charlo double-header, so let's see how that goes. But yeah, the events that night just retroactively proved how much both men's year out of the ring after their first fight against each other really affected them both. I say retroactively because of course the year off didn't stop anyone from picking both of them to win in style against Ramirez and Romero respectively. So to me, now that we've learned that it's a risk to do that sort of thing, and the fact that both of them are possibly even on a career decline already for various reasons, although the rematch could be bigger with both men coming off of big wins in good performances against any noteworthy names aren't a given for either man at this point. So instead of risking it and trying to get Ryan a token win and give Haney an opponent that he could possibly beat up, leaving the possibility for everything to go tits up again, just do the rematch next before things get worse for one of, if not both of them. So yeah, smart money is on the rematch next in my opinion, even though it ain't so appealing right now. Haney is actually coming off of a win, a dominant win on the cards, but not an impressive win, against an uninspired Jose Ramirez as well, by the way. And Ryan is coming off of a loss, of course, but again, if they try get him a win before the Haney rematch, maybe he loses again. And even if he gets a win over someone, what's that one win gonna do to sell a rematch with Devin Haney further? Because anyone who is safe to match Ryan against after that loss to Rolly is gonna be pointless. And as for Haney, we can't give him another opponent to fight before a possible Ryan Garcia rematch that he's gonna engage with and beat up and put on a show against, is he? So to me, in the near future, i.e. the next year, there's nothing you can do to make the rematch any bigger anyway. You can only really make it worse. And then to wait and see if both guys could have a proper career resurgence, well, mainly for Ryan Garcia, because as it goes, Devin Haney is factually undefeated and again coming off of a one-sided win, no matter how undesirable the circumstances around those two facts are. So waiting possibly a couple years plus for each guy to fully build themselves back up, if that's how long it takes, is also too risky and just too long to wait. So if they want to build up this rematch from that big no contest back in 2024, just do it now. I know this is easy to say in hindsight, but the circumstances around the first fight and everything that happened in the year off for both men was enough to sell an immediate rematch anyway. So let's not make the same mistake by trying to be cute again and trying to make the rematch even bigger somehow and let it brew with more build-up fights after already dampening the hype that was coming off of their first big fight against each other with that Times Square card. Trying to give either guy another step-up fight before a rematch with each other is just way too much of a gamble, and that's coming from me, a truly degenerate gambler. But moving on now, because I didn't expect to go off that much about a potential Garcia vs Haney rematch. As for the Teofimo Lopez vs Arnold Barboza Jr. fight, I do have to acknowledge Teofimo Lopez and give him his flowers, because after Barboza beat Jack Catterall to become the WBO interim champ back in February, I immediately predicted that Teofimo Lopez would vacate the belt to not defend against Barboza. And then when Teo actually signed to defend his belt against Barboza, I picked Barboza to beat Teo, giving him a tricky and awkward night. So now after that one-sided victory in Times Square, Teo made me look like a complete casual. I'm not going to start glazing Teofimo Lopez now after that one win because, as I said going into the fight, with how inconsistent Teofimo Lopez is, there's a good chance that he wins this big fight against Barboza and then goes on to have another lackluster performance after that. But I must give him credit for completely outboxing and styling on a top undefeated contender, who did look way bigger than Teo in the ring by the way. So out of the three big names in the three main events, Teo, Haney and Ryan Garcia, needless to say, Teo looked the best by far. But something I must address that the Teo fight in particular highlighted about the whole event is that the crowd was absolutely terrible. I know the main two fights were dead anyway, but to me it was painful to watch when Teo was styling on Barboza and showboating, only to be met by silence from the crowd. I gave Teo every round in the second half of that fight, so it was one-sided from the 7th round onwards from what I saw. And the one thing that can make a one-sided fight entertaining is when you're putting on a show for the crowd as you dominate. But the crowd weren't into it, man. I'm not saying this was some amazing fight or an all-time great performance, not a lot of massive shots landed at all. But we know a Madison Square Garden crowd would have been way more responsive to a performance like that from Teo. So yeah, it's cool that Ring Magazine wanted to be different and go to Times Square. But wasn't that crowd made up of like a few hundred people on an invite-only basis, mainly celebrities? That might be the kind of model that Saudi royals are accustomed to when staging an event, but boxing is for the people, man. So I'm glad that Turkey is making all of these big fights happen, but all this promoting the Fatal Fury game and having the fight in Times Square just looks even more dumb when that night of fights was actually a load of pony. There was only one half decent fight of the three, and during that fight, you just had a bunch of famous people in the crowd, unrelated to boxing for the most part, just sat there on their phones and not reacting to the fight. Then the very next night you had the Canelo card, of course, Canelo's Riyadh season debut. There weren't much hype at all around the actual main event itself because it was just a formality of Canelo getting the IBF belt back. And of course whether or not he actually needed to do that is up for debate. Chasing back the IBF title that you just got stripped of as a unified or undisputed champ is always just going to long things out. But yeah, nothing to say about the fight other than the fact that William Scull literally just ran away. And there is some onus on Canelo to do more to cut the ring off and even just rush him to create an opportunity rather than just stand there a lot of the times. So I had Canelo winning, but I did have it fairly close on the cards. The fact that we had this fight just the day after that Haney vs Ramirez fight was beyond belief. And as for the undercard, it was semi-decent I suppose. Badou Jack vs Norma Kalin was a closely contested back and forth world title fight. Not a thriller, but both men had their moments and yeah, it was highly competitive. Munguia vs Arasi 2, not the satisfactory revenge for Munguia after getting chinned in the first fight. I won't complain because I did back him to win on points as I thought he would play it more safe and not go as gung-ho. But of course in reality, a knockout win would have been the more satisfying comeuppance for Jaime by far. And as for Bakoli vs Jagbar, because I'm talking about 100 different fights in this video, and because I'm yet to rewatch it and rescore it, I'm not going to go into full detail now about the scorecards. But yeah, after watching it live, I had the fight 97-93 to F8 Ajagba, and I thought that I was being lenient to Bakole with 2 of the 3 rounds that I gave him. But then they gave it a draw on the official cards. A clear gift decision for the Riyadh season favourite in Martin Bakole, right? Now I thought everyone would be in agreement that Ajagba was clearly robbed after that, but I guess not. A lot of, and I think most people, said the draw was fair, and some people actually gave the fight to Bakole, so I must just be the biggest casual then. So seeing as a lot of people didn't see it how I did, maybe this might come across as me having a bias for Ajagba or against Bakole, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I just thought that Ajagba objectively outpointed Bakole in there, fairly comprehensively, and too much was made of Bakole's short and sporadic spells of success in the fight when Ajagba would get the better of the majority of each round. I didn't particularly enjoy Ajagba's approach, and I didn't have money on him or anything like that. I like to score the fight objectively, and I really didn't see Bakole winning 5 rounds of that fight at all. But yeah, no round for round breakdown today, but because the scorecards of that fight have been so heavily debated on both sides of the argument, I will look to score that fight in a future video. Maybe ahead of a potential rematch between the two if that does get made. But they're talking about Bakole versus Aitama now, aren't they? So maybe I'll just do it as a pre-fight video for that fight. So of course there was boxing 3 days in a row that weekend, as we had the Inoue fight over in Vegas on the Sunday that everyone was relying on to save the weekend after Friday and Saturday. And it did just that. And the card as a whole was decent as well, with another world title fight on the co-main event. Now look, all we could expect from Inoue in terms of this whole saving the weekend thing was for him to absolutely beat up Cardenas in explosive fashion, most likely within the first half of the fight. I mean, Inoue was a 1-50 favourite, and Cardenas had never boxed for a world title before this fight. So it was about how good Inoue could look in a one-sided win. But the fight in itself would actually deliver, as Inoue got dropped hard by Cardenas by a left hook in the second round. Shocking moment. And Inoue was second guessing himself a bit after the fact, as Cardenas was swinging for the fences with that left hook still. But Inoue got back into it not too long after and started to get his work in and take over in the fight. But Cardenas kept swinging and still looked very dangerous, so it remained a firefight until Inoue got the stoppage win in the 8th round. So that fight was way more competitive than I expected, and it of course completely outshined all of the boxing from the 2 days prior. Nothing too new with Inoue being dropped. He of course only got dropped 3 fights prior, but it was scenes nonetheless. But with the card as a whole, yes, there were exciting performances on there. But I don't know if too many of you saw my community post in reaction to the WBO featherweight title fight in the co-main event while it was on live at the time, but I pointed out something interesting about that top ranked card on that post. By the way, it was a good performance by Rafael Espinosa in that co-main event to defend his belt, and his opponent Vazquez showed good heart in that fight. However, that fight did not need to see a 7th round at all. So yeah, here's the thing with that card as a whole. I know that 50-50 back and forth fights aren't the exclusive criteria for entertainment value in boxing, and one-sided dominant performances that tend to end in stoppages are a big part of the sport, and they're good for the sport. They are a fun watch most of the time as well. But this entire card, from top to bottom, was full of complete mismatches on the odds. All of the favourites were very heavy favourites, and they all won. Again, it doesn't mean that it was a bad show by any means, but there was just no variety there. Just a night of top-ranked stars getting predictable gimme wins. Apart from the Inoue fight, because he of course did climb up off the canvas for the win. Skipping over to the boxing on the weekend just gone, we had the Anthony Cacace vs Lee Wood fight in Nottingham that I was hyping up to be a good fight quite a bit, but I was also very much expecting Cacace to win. And yeah, the fight was decent, but it was pretty much all Cacace. A great performance from the Irishman to outbox Lee Wood in his hometown and then ultimately stop him in the 9th round in a climactic ending. Won me some good money, Anto. And speaking of which, it's been great to see his late career comeuppance. 3 massive wins in 3 massive fights in a row, all within the space of a year for Anto, against Joe Cordina, Josh Warrington, and now Lee Wood. He of course gave up his IBF World Super Featherweight title for this fight with Wood, but he's still the IBO champion. He's got himself paid nicely. It was lovely to see him celebrating with his team in the ring with the cigars and all that. What a guy Cacace is, man. Got on his due in his mid-30s and he's proven himself so well in the last year. But yeah, that fight was nothing too crazy. I picked Cacace to win in my pre-fight video. I didn't predict the method of victory, but I did mention Lee Wood's leaky defense and shaky chin, which came to light in those final moments when Lee Wood was pretty much getting battered around the ring. and Wood was also the underdog due to his inactivity, of course, being out of the ring for over a year and a half. And that came to light with Cacace outworking him and beating him to the punch for the most part of the 8 rounds that came before the stoppage. But Lee Wood wasn't that big of an underdog, so this result wasn't some foregone conclusion by any means. Going into that 9th round now, I actually had Cacace 7 rounds to 1 up, only giving Lee Wood the 4th round, just like Carl Frampton on his unofficial card, I believe. But there was some scorecard controversy with this fight, despite it not going the distance. It was found out by Frank Rowan that Judge Steve Gray had Lee Wood 5-3 up going into the 9th round, which is insane. I know we shouldn't cry about scorecards for a fight that didn't go the distance anyway, but it very well could have gone the distance, and boy is that a bad card. I don't know what fight he was watching. So it was ultimately a good fight and another great performance from Anto Cacace, but it wasn't a war or a thriller or anything. Wasn't quite Cacace vs Cordina nor Wood vs Warrington, but still a good one. As for the undercard, again, a few of you might have seen my community post reaction to it live at the time, and yeah, Owen Cooper vs Chris Congo for starters was a good fight to kick off the main card. Cooper's consistent pressure ultimately got him a clear win on the cards. I did enjoy that one. Liam Davis vs Kurt Walker was a dead fight, let's have it right. Davis did what he had to do for the win, especially coming off of a loss, but I just didn't find that fight entertaining at all. And it was closer than the commentators made out because a lot of the shots landed by Davis only landed on the guard of Walker. Then the co-main event, if you like, the Ezra Taylor vs Troy Jones fight on the domestic light heavyweight scene. Definitely not a boring one, but nothing too enthralling. From the off, Ezra Taylor looked a way sharper and more potent boxer, so I thought we could get a stoppage at some point later on in the fight. And it was a good performance from Ezra Taylor, and a good gritty performance from the lesser boxer Troy Jones to make it competitive and make Taylor somewhat uncomfortable at times. But the fight never really picked up for me. Well earned unanimous decision win on the cards for Ezra Taylor in what was a good step up to line himself up for the British title shot. So we'll see if Taylor is worthy of British level. But overall, not the most entertaining undercards. The 2 fights in the middle of the main card didn't pick up much from Owen Cooper's upset victory to start things out. A successful night for Queensbury boxing, but not the most fan-friendly undercard until the big main event. Later that night, very late in the night for us here in the UK, there were 2 shows over in the States. The Erickson Lubin vs RJ Holmes Jr. card on ProBox TV, and the main one, the Navarette card on Top Rank. He was defending his WBO Super Featherweight title against Charly Suarez, with Ray Muratalla on the co-main event. As for the Muratalla fight, it was a decent performance from him over 12 rounds to become the new IBF interim lightweight champ. So he's of course now in line for Lomanchenko's IBF lightweight title. But if I had to put money on it, and I wish the bookies would offer betting lines for such a thing, I reckon Loma will end up vacating the title, leading to Muratalla being upgraded to full world champion, based on Loma's inactivity right now. Don't get me wrong, I want to see Loma defend his belt, but yeah, I really do doubt it happens. And I'm not too high on Muratalla because back last year when he fought Tevin Farmer, I personally had Farmer winning that fight. But yeah, you can't really blame Muratalla there though, because Farmer is one of the greatest boxers in the world and he's beaten Williams Zepeda twice now in my eyes. Rampant Tevin Farmer fanboy over here if you couldn't tell. But back on topic, after Muratalla was announced the winner against Abdullayev, I quickly switched over to the Erickson Lubin fight, thinking I'll maybe catch the whole first half of the fight before the Navarette fight actually started. But my timing was all off and I only caught the last round of the Lubin fight, but it was a very nice stoppage to end things in the 11th there. I'm still due to catch a ProBox TV card live because it looks like they've got something good going on over there, but there's always so much else going on at the same time and it's so rough being interested in all of these fights that are going on at once. They're all bunched into one day of the week. I think ProBox TV actually used to be on a Wednesday, but apparently they get more views now on Saturday, even though, there's so much competition. Now, on the undercard of the Lubin fight, one Rodolfo Orozco was on there. I didn't watch the fight, but I'm aware that Orozco did lose. I thought I'd give mention to that, as many of you may know that Orozco is a former Conor Benn opponent. Funnily enough, he's Conor Benn's first opponent after Benn's drug test failure, which I went into detail about in my Conor Benn drug cheat video. Link in the description for anyone interested. But what I failed to mention in that video is that Rodolfo Orozco himself actually failed a drugs test himself after the Conor Benn fight, and this was Orozco's first fight back since then, so he was out for over a year and a half. So interesting one there. I'm sure a lot of you know about Orozco from the Conor Benn fight, so I thought I'd point out that he fought for the first time since then on the weekend just gone. But back to the top rank card now. Let's get to the important thing. that Navarette fight. How was this controversy not absolutely taken over boxing news? I'm not going to risk playing a clip of what happened because Top Rank will strike me in an instant, but that cut above Navarette's eye was so clearly from a punch. As Tim Bradley said on commentary like 500 times before the fight was stopped, then started pulling back on his statement, then changing his mind again when the fight was ultimately stopped. Come on now. How many times did they have to show that replay to still not come to the conclusion that Charly Suarez cut Navarette with a punch? I'm not even going to try and articulate a case for the fact that it was a punch that caused the cut because there's literally no case that there was any head clash there. But yeah, they let the fight go on to the next round after the cut, the 7th round, and then the fight got stopped by the doctor at the end of the 7th, and they deemed the mythical accidental headbutt as the cause of the cut that led to the stoppage. So they went to the scorecard and Navarette won a technical decision to remain the WBO Super Featherweight champ. Second Super Featherweight titleist to retain his belt on the night, along with Anto Cacace. That really should have been a TKO win for Suarez though. He should be the new world champ. He got completely robbed there, no doubt. As of this recording, it's looking like the fight will be overturned to a no contest, which means Navarette still remains champ. So if it does indeed get ruled a no contest, the WBO better mandate a rematch. Because either way, that ought to have been a TKO win for Suarez. He should be the champ anyway. But after this fight now, it was UFC time. So yeah, after that Navarette versus Suarez fight finished, the UFC 315 main event between Belal Muhammad and Della Maddalena was on, when the sun was already fully up on this side of the pond. And boy was that a classic welterweight title fight. Instant classic. And we saw JDM pull off the upset to become the new champ. That was almost the perfect 5-round fight. JDM showed great takedown defense, better than expected, but got the better of the boxing as expected. Belal was also surprisingly happy to engage on the feet and strike with JDM to some decent success, and showed true grit and toughness to take big shots from Jack. So yeah, a way more entertaining fight than I expected there. Good moments in there too. It was a nice technical striking affair for the first 3 rounds, JDM switching stances seamlessly and setting up his punch as well. A lot of good straight shots in there, and Belal would land some decent straight shots of his own here and there too, and actually used his failed takedown attempts to get some nice punches in on the break. And then in the championship rounds, it picked up and just became a war, what can I say? I mean, look at both men's face after the fight. That's the perfect way for a 5-rounder to go. Belal nearly got his due with the grappling right at the end as well, but that was just for Jack to stand back up and end the fight like a G. So yeah, great fight, and great to see a guy with such a boxing heavy and fan friendly style with the belt around his waist. Obviously, now everyone's talking about the lightweight champ Islam Makhachev going up to challenge for JDM's newly won title, which is crazy work because welterweight is so stacked right now with guys gunning for the title shot. Ian Gary, Sean Brady, Shavkat Rakhmonov, who is out injured still, and Joaquin Buckley, who's about to fight the former welterweight champion Usman. I think one of them 4 should get the title fight next against JDM, and Makhachev should have to fight one of the other 3 to earn his shot, or just stay at lightweight to fight Topuria coming up from featherweight, then move up to welterweight later on. I know that sounds a bit mad, saying Topuria should have an instant shot at Makhachev up at 155, but Makhachev should have to earn his shot at 170. But isn't 170 just so stacked right now? More so than 55 now for sure. And lightweight has been credited as the most stacked weight class in the UFC for the most part of a decade now. And speaking of the greatness of the welterweight division, I can't believe that some people are making out that a win in his first title defense against JDM would bring Belal Muhammad anywhere close to Georges St. Pierre in the welterweight GOAT discussion. But now Belal has lost to JDM, can we all agree that that conversation is non-existent now? And earlier in the night we had the Jose Aldo vs Ayman Zahabi fight. I think I caught the second half of that live and had it on at the same time as the Muratalla fight maybe. Again, I'm not too sure. Just too much going on a Saturday night. I understand how society and normal people's schedules work, but still. But yeah, it was crazy to see Jose Aldo gas out that badly in the 3rd round after trying to finish Zahabi, then nearly got finished himself after the fact, and I'm glad he didn't. It went the 3-round distance and Zahabi got it on the cards by a unanimous decision, all 3 judges scoring it to him 29-28. Now, I heard people saying robbery after the fight, so I did watch the full fight back just now, and I reckon the 1st round is Aldo's, the 3rd is Zahabi's, and the 2nd round is really the swing round for me. I'd probably just edge it to Aldo, meaning 29-28 Aldo on my cards, but I wouldn't say robbery. I get it though, people obviously want to see the legendary Jose Aldo get the nod against someone like this, and they probably had money on Aldo. And don't get me wrong, as a fan of his, I do want to see him win too, and I also had money on him. But this time, I ain't gonna cry robbery. But it makes it worse that he announced his retirement afterwards as well, because he actually wanted to make a run for the bantamweight title, but now it's unfeasible after that loss. But I trust that he will come back one more time to end on a win for us, because just when he thinks he's out, they pull him back in. But yeah, that's all I have to say on the UFC. I did catch other fights on the card too, but this card was mainly built on the big title fight main event, then they just had a little Canadian undercard. Literally just like UFC 297 last year. Alright, back to boxing now. To answer the question in the title, did the UK shows dominate the last 3 weeks of boxing? Well, in regards to the zone shows alone, over the last 3 weekends, we had 4 DAZN shows. The Chris Eubank Jr. vs Conor Benn show in the UK, an all-English affair promoted by both Matchroom and Boxer. The Times Square triple header in the States, of course, which was basically a Golden Boy card. The Canelo card in Riyadh, a card built around a man from North America, and the card's timing was catered to that time zone. Then we had Cacace vs Wood, a fight promoted by Queensbury, and headlined by an Irishman and an Englishman, and taking place in the UK. So as far as the zone is concerned, the UK definitely had a better time there. Eubank Jr. vs Benn alone is enough to make that the case in terms of what we got in the ring, the hype leading up to that fight, and the atmosphere. And Cacace vs Wood was a good one as well in front of a lively Nottingham crowd. But if you want to straight up put the UK shows head to head with the US shows in terms of their entertainment value in the last 3 weeks, we have to take the 2 top ranked shows into consideration. The Navarette title defense with their interim lightweight title fight in the co-main, and the Inoue title defense with the world featherweight title fight as the co-main event for that one. And then of course you had the ProBox TV card as well, which I'm sure was decent, but again I only just caught the end of the main event. But I know what you're all thinking. How can I be talking about all of these fights from the last few weeks without mentioning that the man himself, the people's champion, literally fought on the weekend just gone? Yes lads, one Greg Hackett fought on Saturday night, and one, the greatest himself. So to answer the question, did UK shows dominate the last 3 weeks of boxing? Most certainly not. The fact alone that Greg Hackett just fought means that America unequivocally outshone the UK in regards to boxing shows as of late. Maybe even this whole year probably. But yeah, I did just want to give my little take about all of the fights that happened lately in a video format. Obviously I watch all of every top level UK and US card pretty much live and react to all of it on my community post while it happens, but I thought I'd just sum up all of the fights briefly in one video. I will talk a little bit on the UFC too when running down a weekend of fights. And funnily enough, if Belal Muhammad won on Saturday and people started going too crazy with the welterweight GOAT talk, I was considering doing a whole video analysing Georges St Pierre's resume in depth to elaborate on why no other welterweight is coming close anytime soon. But as I said, the conversation was far-fetched before, but now that Belal just lost, it's literally non-existent, so yeah, I won't be doing that whole UFC welterweight GOAT video. I'll be sticking to boxing.
Stick to boxing, do what man know.
And if you guys want to hear my takes on current affairs in boxing more, like pre-fight and post-fight videos, then please do like this video. I appreciate all of you who do leave a thumbs up on my videos and leave your comments down below a lot, but all round, my like to view ratios are pretty abysmal, so I will have to start being one of those people who ask for likes. I've currently got a ton of plans for historical boxing videos, and I do like to keep up with current affairs as much as possible. Obviously when I was doing the Eubank Ben series, then a lot of other things got put on hold. But if anyone's interested in my current affairs videos like this one, then again, please do like this video, because I watch all of the boxing anyway, as I said. But in regards to producing content about things that are very current, the videos do need the likes to trend more within a short space of time. The work rate for my part will stay the same, but if I get the gist that these current affairs ones aren't too popular, then I'll just have to focus my energy on the more historical and broader videos that can trend at any time. Go for them old video essays with the clickbaity thumbnails. I've got a very long list of planned videos with things about heavyweight history in there, and even some interesting stuff about historical boxing controversies outside of the ring. So if you guys want more of that stuff, then let me know in the comments. Because for instance, we've got Johnny Fisher vs Dave Allen 2 coming up on the weekend. We've got Serhii Boatuk fighting later that night. And then we've got Josh Taylor fighting the weekend after. And then the Wednesday after that we've got a big show in Japan. And we can go on and on. And I'll be watching all of those fights live, probably the entirety of the cards. And I'll be watching most of the media around most of those fights as well. But realistically, if this video gets like less than a couple of thousand views and less than 50 likes, then I'll leave out making videos about any of those fights and just mash work on some historical pieces. As for very immediate post-fight reactions, I would actually like to do live reactions to boxing cards one day, but I just don't have the setup right now. I can obviously invest in a setup with a proper camera and whatnot, but it's just pointless right now because I don't have my own space to record comfortably for long extended periods of time, and changing that fact is unfeasible as of right now. Breaking the fourth wall a bit there, but I just thought I'd put that out there. So yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments down below about all of the fights that I've spoken about today. Comment what type of videos you guys want to see. Do leave a like please, and you have been listening to O.M.E Boxing.